Go. Good morning, everyone. And Gary, you're going to
Is your
start
microphone
us off.
on, Commissioner?
Pardon me?
Sorry.
It's on.
Okay,
It's
go ahead.
on.
Sorry.
It's on. Let me move it
Apologies.
here. Okay. So let's get started, Gary. You'll move us through our policy sessions.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today is September 18th, 2024. You have a policy session today. Chair Smith is out of the office due to a family emergency. Commissioner West is online, so he is online for this meeting. Commissioner Schrader will chair this meeting, and you do have a quorum present. This first and only policy session today is Lottery Dollar Arts Grant Program. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, will present on behalf of the Office of Economic Development. You've asked for this. We're reporting back to you on what you had requested. So, Dan, please take it away.
Thanks so much. I'm not sure, is it vice chair? I'm not sure how I do this. It's like Commissioner Schrader. Commissioners, thanks so much for the time today. We are following up from a discussion that we had with you back on June 26th. If you recall, we had a discussion, we meaning the Office of Economic Development, had a discussion with the board about memberships, dues, things of that nature, and there was also some requests from various art associations, and at that time there was a recommendation to kind of limit the funding in one of those areas, but also look to see if there's an opportunity for more local funding for some of the art and cultural activities within Clackamas County. And so we've gone out and done some research. Actually, also during that discussion on June 26th, there was a dollar amount mentioned. It was the $100,000 that you're seeing in your staff report. We've just kept that, so we can discuss that as well. But essentially, since that time, we've gone out and done some research regarding if there is a local entity that could kind of fill that role for Clackamas County proper to work more closely and connected with the artists and cultural activities within the county. Essentially, we have found such an entity. There is the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition, and basically is primarily established nonprofit organization that provides funding and support Clackamas County-based artists and organizations who support artists. The coalition is one of 45 county and tribal-based local networks in Oregon whose primary function is to re-grant an annual appropriation from the Oregon Cultural Trust to essentially to supporting arts, heritage, humanities across Oregon. The goal and the mission of the commission is to grow the cultural assets of Clackamas County. The coalition is led by local volunteers. I want to highlight that. It's all volunteer-based, whose primary function is to represent local artists, heritage, and humanities interests and distribute funds accordingly to the priorities identified within their plan, the cultural plan. The coalition receives anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a year on average. There's no other funding that's provided unless they come through private donations or if there are gifted grants. They have a competitive process, and grants range from $750 to $3,500, roughly, under their current program they have. And that also depends on how much the coalition receives on an annual basis. The coalition is supported by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. Essentially, they are the fiscal agent and do all the administrative, financial management, funding, and training services. The Arts Alliance receives about a 15% administrative fee for all the support they provide, which isn't bad. And essentially, they are then responsible. That kind of lets the coalition kind of focus on the specificity of the volunteers, where the money is going. The money is being directly invested in local opportunities within Clackamas County. You can also see from the materials that we provided, there's a list. You can kind of get an idea about who they have funded with the funding they have had to date. It's a list of 2024 grant receivers and 2023 grant receivers. There's a discussion and information also that talks about kind of their total grants and total awards. And then there's information here about the coalition, kind of their mission and purpose, vision and values. And I share this with you to have a discussion. One, if there's interest in still moving forward with this particular interest to fund some local art component. These would be lottery dollars that we'd be funding it with. And just have a discussion with you about if there's interest. One, I should say we haven't found any additional opportunities, I should say that out loud, that we are aware of above and beyond this to fund that. But again, we can always go back, do some more research if you like, or if you're comfortable with this, please feel free to have a discussion and we can see how you'd like to advance. There's three options, I believe, that are available. One is directing staff to advance the Lottery Arts Grant Program funding agreement with the coalition, providing funding to a certain amount. In here we've said $100,000. We can come back and provide you additional information, or we can pause this assessment at this particular time. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, colleagues, I think we're at the question stage, and I do see Ben's light on.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. I
I'm
thought,
sitting in Ben's seat
I
this
thought that
morning.
is so strange. Anyway, thank you. You're going to enjoy me today, aren't you?
Well-shaved Ben.
Dan,
right.
on,
Go ahead.
Calls Martha today, too.
yeah, Dan, on attachment B is a list. It goes from year 2005 to 2024, and total grants is 694,000 and some change. Those are grants from what entity?
Those are grants from the coalition.
From the coalition to Clackamas County over those years?
No, to entities within Clackamas County.
To entities
Over those,
within
correct.
Clackamas County,
So you'll
okay.
see that, if you look at the third column from the left, it talks about, basically it's their funding, and then essentially
see.
to the right, it goes how many, you see the total grants authorized and the total grants provided.
Okay, understood. And for FY '24-25, what does $100,000 represent? In other words, what do we have for '24-25 in total lottery dollars, and how much of that total is committed? In other words, what kind of impact does $100,000 have on our lottery dollars picture?
Well, there's a lot of things you want to do with those lottery dollars. So essentially, we've talked to the board about a number of different things, one of which is the fact that we've established, in fact, I haven't talked to you about this yet, but we're getting ready to send the board out an email to tell you that we've finalized and are advancing our notice of funding for the grant. If you recall, you had an economic grant program you wanted to establish and authorize staff to advance to grant monies to local businesses for certain capital investments, et cetera. There's dollars that have been set aside and already dedicated to fund a number of organizations and membership dues. I'm hearkening back to the June 26, 2024 policy session where we did BCC membership dues to all of the alliances, chambers of commerce that are in there. We also did, we had the money set aside for the workforce development grant. That was the grant with Clackamas Community College. You've already implemented that. And then we have $600,000 set aside for the business development grants, which has already been authorized as well. There's a remaining fund balance there,
Okay.
which we can bring more information back to you on.
Okay, so if the board approves this 100K in your option one, on what date does the 100K get moved over to the Oregon Cultural Trust?
The authorization you're looking to give us today is to work with county council and do the agreement between the two entities. And then once that agreement is authorized by the coalition and signed and authorized, most importantly, by the Board of County Commissioners, then the transfer can occur.
Okay, so it could happen before the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, those are all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Chavez.
Yeah, similar to Commissioner Scholl's thoughts, first of all, I'm not adverse to doing this. I appreciate the work staff's done. Great job. Sounds like a good, solid organization to help divvy these funds out accordingly. My thinking is today is, again, similar to what Commissioner Scholl was saying, is trying to understand proportionally with the available dollars that we're spreading out, how this, whatever that number is, whether it's 100 or it's less or it's 50, whatever that number is, that proportionally of the available dollars that are budgeted, right, versus sitting there, and the economic impact it would potentially deliver, just understanding that or seeing a matrix of how that plays in so that one particular field or one particular sector or interest is not overly funded or underfunded and so on. So I'm looking for proportionality. Again, I'm not adverse to this, but to settle on an amount, for me today, I'm not ready to do that, to settle on an amount, until I have an understanding of that proportionality. That's what I'm looking for.
Can I speak to that just briefly? And so I'm speaking in generalities here about numbers. And so roughly, I think we get $2.3 to $2.5 million annually of lottery funds. Keep in mind the fact this program was essentially redirected when we had the pandemic. They did a lot of specific work. We had a lot of staff turnover, things like that. Now we are reinvigorating this program back up, the Office of Economic Development. We've talked to the board about hires that we're doing in there. We talked about the plan that we're looking to advance. We've talked about the fact there's a beginning fund balance that's carrying forward. And what we're tracking right now is more of what are the year-over-year annual operational costs, so that we're not overspending above the money we're getting in. And then two, seeing how we can use that beginning fund balance to better to provide opportunities for businesses within Clackamas County. And so there's a couple low-hanging fruit that we've had already, which is kind of the grant program, which we've implemented and we're moving forward. We did the funding with Clackamas Community College, so we're kind of slowly moving through there. And those are dollars above and beyond the annual operating cost for the program, if that makes sense. And so we're trying to get those dollars that are in that, you say they're sitting around, we're trying to activate as many of those dollars as we can into different programs and into different activities for as long as we can. Because again, the more that we run those, the more that we implement those programs, the more that beginning fund balance is going to go down because our staffing has gone up. And so you look at the year-over-year costs, and then you look at how that beginning fund balance can be used and activated out into the community.
Yeah, and if I could follow, the other aspect is that regardless of what program or sector these dollars are directed, I'd like to see some kind of a, annual performance measure that looks at how are we doing, right? I mean, is that working out? We still have proportionality, or what is the multiplier effect, essentially?
Yeah.
I know that's a foggy thing at times, but I want to make sure we have the ability, whether it's in the agreement or not, to recalibrate that amount. Let's just say it's doing really, really well. Maybe we want to put more in this particular program. Let's say it's doing very poorly. We might want to scale that back because maybe there's needs elsewhere. So I want to see us be, flexible as we go forward. And that's why I'm still not settled on the amount. I'm okay with this approach and everything else in the packet, but just not the amount at this
And
point.
I can't speak to the performance on this because this is a new group we're working with. Sure. And and that's why maybe it's the board has an interest in reducing it a little bit to kind of figure that out, how they work and how it goes forward, or increasing it. That's your decision. I will tell you, though, that we are looking at kind of those performance measures as it comes to kind of that grant program. I mean, we have been very intent around, number one, what are things that we can do to help citizens of Clackamas County? Higher wage rates are a big concern from the Board of County Commissioners, sustainable wage, living wage. So that's been our work with Clackamas Community College. We're doing these grant programs to invest in businesses. The discussion is what's the return on that investment? What are you creating and how are we going to measure with that? How do we report that back to you? These aren't big grants. I think they're approximately $100,000 a piece. We've got $600,000 set, but we're looking to have that grant program go on in perpetuity for a while and continue to be able to report back to you, hey, they resulted in A, B, C, or D. Another interesting thing that we're doing with the program, and we haven't reported back to you, is internally we're talking about how do we leverage the dollars. We've got a lot of power from different programs, and how do we bring all that power together? So if it's between our urban renewal program, Office of Economic Development, with the lottery funds, how do you take those dollars and package those dollars up to get bigger returns and bigger investments? And that's something we're going to come back and have a discussion with you about. And those performance standards can be a part of that as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Gary, you had your line.
Commissioner West would like to speak.
Okay, Ben.
I think. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Couple questions. I think that Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl bring up some good concerns and points to look at. One of the things I'm curious about is if we're going to hold Performa and kind of have a matrix for that, am I right that Moot is funded through lottery dollars?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's also one of those cultural entities that we don't really have an expectation to have any Performa on because of the type of entity that it is, and its kind of inherent struggles as being kind of an older localized museum, but we still keep it and support it the best that we can. I know for me, it's disheartened to see, I guess it's fair to say that RAC has kind of gotten defunct or really just become hyper Portland focused. And so it wasn't really a good fit for us anymore, and we weren't bringing back those leverage or matching dollars. But one thing that I am really, really concerned about is that we do have quite a few large and longstanding cultural and arts organizations in Clackamas County that relied on that funding significantly. And I'm really concerned about not just Lakewood Theater in Lake Oswego, probably the most predominant theater in Clackamas County and one of the more respected and ones in the region. And then also we have the Youth Music Project, where also the Oregon Music Hall of Fame is in West Lynn. And we had some other artists doing really great work, I think contributing to the economic viability and the cultural spaces in Clackamas County. I think that they are economic drivers. And those artists now are going to see like a large shortfall in their businesses, and these are their business, right? Not only is it the work that they do, and sometimes nonprofit, but many of these smaller artists, this is also part of their livelihood, and they sell their art to public entities or whoever will buy it. And I don't understand now how this new organization, are they going to work separately from, like, are they going to be like RAC and take in applications and then fund these entities? I know we have entities that we're really concerned about and we want to fund. Or where does the Clackamas Arts Alliance play into this? And like, what's their role? I know they receive funding to help the courthouse. So I'm not quite understanding the role and how they can kind of support the objectives of the board as an organization. They sound great, but I don't know if you can answer those questions that I have.
Yeah. So they're, to the best of my knowledge, they are an independent nonprofit from Clackamas County Arts Alliance. They do partner with the Arts Alliance as their fiscal agent, okay? So all the monies that are going to this, with the exception of the 15%, which is the Arts Alliance overhead costs, would be directed out into the grant program. You talk about the board's priorities and or emphasis. That is something that we can make sure is included in the agreement that we have with this entity to identify what the board's priorities are for the use of these funds, which we can obviously bring back and share with the board. If they have questions, comments, or concerns about that, we can do that.
Can we, follow up question, can we give priority to those organizations that now have a funding gap because RAC is not really an entity operating in Clackamas County any longer? For these funds, can Lakewood Theater and other individual artists and the Youth Music Project, can they get priority to have those funding gaps filled, or are we allowed to do that?
You can.
It's your money. You can do however, you can set any guidelines or criteria you wish for this program. Yes.
What I've continued to hear from the board is the fact that they have an interest in funding. So, I mean, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, the concern is, could an outside agency come in and get funded with this through this process and circumvent the board? And the intent would be to do a funding agreement that ensures that this entity, and the priority for these funds is to fund certain activities, direct activities that are occurring in Clackamas County by Clackamas County residents. And that is kind of the concern and the priority that I see. And we can add more specificity to that if the board likes, and priority to that if the board likes. Again, it's your dollars. You can do with it as you wish.
I would like us to maybe consider, at least initially, some type of prioritization for applicants that are losing their funding from RAC, and we're trying to replace that and keep them whole. I think that maybe that should be a strategy we use. Maybe that's not every year moving forward, and maybe this will be dependent also on performance metrics that we place into this. But my goal is to keep us whole where we're at, and then if we grow it or if it becomes wildly successful, then we can have adjustment like Commissioner Savas said. But I don't want these other entities to not be made whole.
Okay.
Thank you. I know, Commissioner.
Understood.
All right. Yes,
one more
Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so according to your attachment A, this year so far, Clackamas County has received $51,000 and change, and last year we received $59,500. Okay, so my question is this. If we were to approve option one for the 100K, less 15% administrative cost, which is $85,000 left over. Next year, when we look at this, would I see approximately 51,000 plus 85 or 140 $36,000 coming through the coalition to organizations in Clackamas County? Or is there a possibility that when they receive our 100K, that the money that they're using to fund the 51,000 this year is moved over somewhere else, and we end up with roughly the same amount of money as we have this year? Is that a probability or a possibility?
I mean, anything is a possibility, but I think within the agreement, we can articulate the fact that we want this to be funding above and beyond your current funding levels, and we're
Yeah,
looking for
okay.
you to prioritize, as we heard from Commissioner West,
Okay.
if the rest of the board concurs, to prioritize those entities that have lost
Okay.
funding from RAC.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So that verbiage in the agreement,
Yep.
I think, is very important. And with that, I'd be happy to support option 1 today. Thank you.
I do have a few questions, but your light is still on, Paul?
Yeah,
You wanna
yeah.
comment? And then I'm going to make a few comments now. Is it okay? And then we can,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I appreciate Commissioner Scholl leaning towards option 1. As I mentioned earlier, I haven't heard anything from my colleagues that I strongly disagree with at all, but I do like the questions and some of the analysis we're kind of seeking. I won't say analysis, but maybe some numbers, matrix, looking at the whole picture to determine what the amount actually is, so we can throttle it up or down accordingly. I would like to Commissioner West's point about what it takes to make them whole, the ones that are losing funding, how much is left over
yeah.
out of 50,000 or 100,000, whatever that amount is we choose. But my only reservation with option 1 is that we're saying we're green-lighting 100,000 without having all those questions answered. So I'm leaning more towards option 2. But you know, the only part I don't like about option 2 is says and revisit at a later time. I don't want to drag this out. You know, I think we can move. I assume staff could put that together pretty quickly. So I really don't want to delay this or pause it. I just want to get those answers before. So I don't know if Commissioner West or Commissioner Scholl would modify his motion or reconsider maybe option 2.
I have one more question.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, regarding the issue of keeping, quote, keeping them whole, that adds a level of complexity to this. If we are going to trust the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition to look at the needs of organizations throughout the county and make determination on how much they should get, then I think that's what we should do. I don't want to complicate their role in this by asking them to, quote, keep other entities whole as the RASC is potentially defunded. So, again, okay, in regards to the impact of 100K, I think starting out at 100K makes sense. We can always increase it in the future, should that be possible. So 100K makes sense. And then the other thing is the impact of the 100K on what you said, Dan Johnson, the 2.3 million to 2.5 million. I think that is a staff assessment issue, right? You can come back and let us know. The 100K can easily be absorbed into our current lottery proceed expectations. So again, I have no problem with option 1.
This is a first date.
Yeah.
We've never talked to these folks. We haven't worked with them. We have good thoughts about them. They've seemed very intent. They're all volunteer-based. This commitment does not mean continuing commitment.
Yeah.
Our agreement will basically stipulate the fact that we are going to fund you. Here's the priority. And I think that I go back to the comments that Commissioner West said. If the language is around the priority to those entities that were previously funded through RAC, not make whole, but priority to those entities, that's an easier way to kind of deal with that issue. And again, we'll bring that agreement back in front of you for consideration to take a look at.
Commissioner Schrader, may I speak, please?
Yes, and then I would like to make a few comments. I have some questions, but
I
let's
wanna-
get
I want
everybody
to comment,
else.
and then also Commissioner West has his hand raised. So,
Right, I saw that.
as Dan just said, this is a one-year pilot. If you don't like it, we'll change it in a year. Second, you are not funding RAC this year, and you reduced your funds to the Clackamas Arts Alliance, which totals $100,000. This is not additional money. It's basically covering the money you previously were paying to arts agencies from lottery dollars, so maybe that might
Okay.
make you feel better. And then finally, at one point last time, you suggested our staff could run this grant program, and I'm saying no. That's why we're looking to this external coalition to run this on behalf of Clackamas County. Just information for you to consider as you discuss. Commissioner West would like to speak when you're ready.
All right, Commissioner West, go ahead.
Commissioner Schrader, I can defer until you make your first comment. That's okay.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I
Go
can
ahead.
wait.
Okay.
It's more I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, however we can make, maybe making whole isn't the most articulate way to put that, but I do like the idea of prioritizing the long-standing organizations like the Lakewood Theater, like the Youth Music Project, with the Music Hall of Fame, and there's a few others that have done really important work in our county. So I don't know how we do that language. It's like, Dan, that maybe we can, I don't know if the motion needs to be amended or adjusted. I don't quite understand if where we're at with that. But to me, that is a really important way to make sure that we are trying to fill the gap where the gap was created with RAC not being available any longer. And here's the other thing is now that there's not matching funds, what was happening is that RAC we give them $1, they get 2 or 3 back to the county. That's just not the thing. So the dollars just aren't going as far. We're doing the best we can with what we got. So you can't necessarily make whole because I don't think there's any matching funds coming in from this organization able to say, hey, Clackamas County, if you give us these funds, then we'll be able to match them with other grant sources. I haven't quite heard that. It'd be awesome if that's the case. That's ideal. But those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to make a few comments, and some of this is just going to be clarifying questions for me. So the Cultural Coalition is officially a 501c3,
Yes.
but they are all volunteer.
Well, I mean, they're a nonprofit agency. I'm sure they have a board of directors and some paid staff.
Right.
Right.
We have no idea if they are actively fundraising to add to $100,000 that we would give them in order to fulfill their mission. So there's that piece. Do they have a development function where they can bring in additional dollars from the community over and above? And this may not be answered today, I'm just throwing these out there, over and above just county support, because I do want to support the arts. You can make a case. It's a big piece of economic development. However, our focus with these dollars has always been business retention, retention, expansion, and then recruitment. So we're kind of veering a little bit more into another world, but you can make a case that, yeah, it's an economic development / it's also a tourism tool as well. So how are we going to leverage, are these folks leveraging any additional dollars other than cultural trust money would be my question to them. The second question is, RAC was able to get dollars from the National Endowments for the Arts. Do they have that capacity to do so? And is that something that they would undertake as a nonprofit group to continue to fund this rather than just allocating money? I think those are questions that we need to ask these folks to up the game if we really want to fund arts to the level that we'd like to see. The other piece of this is, okay, so the Clackamas County Arts Alliance is it its own nonprofit? Or is it simply an administrative piece?
It's a separate nonprofit organization.
So we have 2 separate nonprofits. Okay, we're going to be giving $100,000 to which nonprofit? The Clackamas County Arts Alliance in order to administer a program?
You already give funding to the Arts Alliance
That's what I thought.
separately. That's
Right.
something you approved previously. This
Right.
would be another
So the
$100,000.
So the Cultural Trust is largely just getting us the state dollars funneled in. But there's no way at this point that I'm seeing how we can access federal dollars.
I do not believe that to be the case.
Yes.
I mean, right now, if I'm looking at their materials and going back, I'm looking at attachment C, you can see the coalition receives approximately $60,000 a year from the trust.
Right.
Yep.
So to me, I'm not a member of the board, I'm a big supporter of the arts, but it seems to me that folks from these various entities should be looking at other opportunities as well as the county, because when I look at these grants, they're fantastic, they're wonderful, but they're all small grants, okay? And what RAC was able to do, at least from what their information was that they gave us, was to leverage really additional dollars at the national level. So this is a shift for these folks, should they choose to do this, because that's a question that I would like to see happen. And I'd like to see, since they're two nonprofits, what is their, do they have development opportunities that they haven't pretty much hooked into yet? In other words, who are their donors? Where are they cultivating donors? How are they paying for their overhead? How are they getting external dollars to actually do these kinds of programs to potentially leverage, like at the federal level? Now, Dan, you don't have to answer these today. I'm just throwing this out
can't.
there. And it's not going to stop me from assuming we could move ahead with $100,000. But what I'm questioning is the underlying assumption is that people do keep coming to us, the county, for dollars. And then it becomes the only source. And my strong feeling is that we want to be supportive, but it would behoove people to actually up their game a little bit and, try and get other dollars other than the county, because I would like to see, if we're going to be helping with grants, larger amounts of money and somehow accessing NEA dollars, because that was the real RAC gift or difference that they had. We can leverage the smaller dollars, but it's got to be more than just public county dollars. So I'm willing to go forward with this today. I'm just saying this for the sake of the organizations. I hope they're listening to me today, that, they really need to be not just the Cultural Trust here in Oregon. They need to be accessing these other dollars, and they cannot be wholly dependent on the county for continuous funding. I mean, I think we're willing to give up to a point, but if they want to really play a larger role in the arts in this county and be able to support entities like Lakewood and things of that sort, there's going to have to be a little more, I think, more development work on their part to move forward. So that's just my comments with that. And do we have anyone who is speaking to these organizations directly, kind of bringing that message? I'd be willing to do that.
We have staff coordinating with them, and they can share that.
Okay.
And we can
Well,
coordinate
then
a
their
discussion.
message, then what I'm saying today will get back to
Yes.
them, and I would welcome any phone calls. But as I see with Moot as well, these are valuable organizations that we need for arts and culture, but they also have to be somewhat self-sustaining in a way where they are doing outreach and garnering dollars from the larger community as supporters, as well as the county. So, okay. So, folks, where are we? We have a motion on the floor? Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Chavez.
Good, thanks, Chair.
Yeah.
Just following parliamentary procedure, there has not been a second yet to.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
To Commissioner Scholl's motion, so I don't know if it's at that point to where we act or not, but I'm hearing from Commissioner West concerns.
Point of order.
There's been no motion made yet.
Okay.
I made no
okay.
motion
Okay,
yet.
okay, great. Okay, thanks for the
I'm happy
clarification.
to make one.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. So I heard concerns about Commissioner West on how much of those dollars it will require to make them whole. I think that's a good, valid question. And then, in light of that question, I'm also thinking, well, what's the remainder? What at that point becomes discretionary of the balance? And I'd like to know that. I'm also hearing some information that might incline me to actually support more than 100,000.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to make a one-year decision without some of the good questions and Commissioner Schrader's great questions as well with regards to, the organization itself and the ability to multiply and get more support, financial support, and just leverage those dollars. So it's always easier to give more money in the future than it is to take it away. So you know that. So that's why I think proceeding cautiously is and getting these questions answered, I think is a really a good idea. So I'm inclined, again, I want to move. I don't want to stall. But I'm inclined to make a motion for option 2. And again, if we can act as expediently as possible to get this underway, I would appreciate that. But I think there's been some really good questions, and Commissioner Schrader's experience here on leveraging those dollars is a very, very valid concern. So we're not just picking the amount, we're also picking the organization and probably want to get a little bit more information about their funding. Is that what I heard, Commissioner Schrader?
What I'm hearing is an ability to fundraise as well as being dependent on county coffers, because I think that's an important piece for the arts. And if we're going to do a program similar to RAC, at least in their framework, that was part of what they brought to the table with a return on investment. And these are organizations we don't know. I would be willing to go with option 1 today. Actually, Commissioner, if you don't mind, just because let's get something started. And I don't think it's going to preclude having these other questions. But I think we're going to have conversations with both the Clackamas County Arts Alliance and the Cultural Trust folks about what their expanding roles are when it comes to funding, because we also want to make sure that we're doing our business functions with the dollars that we have from the lottery, and I don't want to see them supplanted.
I want to be clear. There's nothing in this information that suggests that they leverage any other money. It is trust money only. These are volunteers
That's right.
that help do grants.
I know
They
that.
help get the information out, and so I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. They're not a RAC discussion around the national endowments
No,
component.
I'm just, what I'm saying to them is, can you up your game a little bit? That's all.
We can talk to them about that. Yep.
Okay, but that is not pertinent to the immediate, discussion that we're going to have to move ahead. Okay, I understand that. I'm trying to message to our arts folks that, small grants are great. It'd be great to get some larger amounts in there. I think that would go to Commissioner West's notions of, funding to a larger degree some of those other organizations. So is that clear, Dan? I don't want to make you nervous, Dan. You're like, oh my God, no, what are we talking about now? Okay. All right. Got it. So do we have a motion, colleagues?
You got a motion, you haven't had a second yet.
Okay, I'm going to second the motion for,
There's been no motion made yet.
Permission-
No one has made a motion yet.
okay, so can we get a motion, I guess is what I need
Well,
to
I
ask.
just have one question if I could. So Gary, you seem to have some numbers at the top of your head. What would it take to backfill or make whole? Do you have those numbers at hand in your head? Because you seem to have a rough idea at hand.
It's about $100,000, Commissioners, of what RAC was giving to local Clackamas County arts agencies that are no longer getting those grants. So it's about $100,000 total, which is why staff is recommending $100 to give to the coalition to administer the program for you.
Okay, so essentially, we're not really, if we fulfill what Commissioner West's goal is to make everyone whole, then the organization has no discretion whatsoever. They're just going to be an agent to distribute the dollars accordingly. Is that how I'm reading it?
What I'm hearing from you today, it sounds like that may be the case. By setting criteria, it may be that they're just going to pass it to those direct organizations. Yeah.
So if
Commissioner West would
that's your
like to
goal,
speak.
colleagues, then that's what will happen.
Commissioner West has his hand raised.
Okay, Commissioner West.
Yeah, quick question, because it's my understanding that RAC gave around $60,000, maybe $70,000, and then they brought in like another, $40,000 or $50,000 from leveraged funds before we were, separated ties with them and before they kind of went defunct. That's why I am really supportive and think it's important that what Commissioner Schrader said and what I said previously is like, how can we help evolve or be involved in a process where they can be more effective in getting either grants, especially from the national or federal grants. So I'm not quite sure, Gary, if this $100,000 is just to this new organization or to some of that, or is that also, or are we also having the Clackamas County Arts Alliance come out of that funding? Or are we just funding what we originally funded with the understanding that it's going to be less to our community because we don't have those matching funds? So I'm kind of unclear on that.
This would not impact the money you've already given to the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. That's done. Again, we're only doing what you asked of us, commissioners, on June 26th. You've given us a lot more criteria now that I almost want to say, let's staff come back to you because you've changed what you've asked for in June, and we need more time to put all this together for you at this point.
If I may, in fact, I'll just say that if we go through with this, it's only $85,000 that's left over.
Yeah.
So you're not even fulfilling the initial goal of the $100,000 number if there's a 15% overhead.
Okay, Commissioner, do you have the line?
Yes, I feel this discussion is spinning off to the side here of the intent of the policy session this morning and the information that's provided. The issue regarding the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition and the Commissioner Schrader's comments regarding encouraging them to expand their outreach and the amount of money coming in, I feel is a sidebar to the
That's correct.
policy session this morning. And also, I think the part about influencing the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition and their decision-making on where this money goes, you know, the decisions they've been making in the last 2 years, as shown here, is also a sidebar. So this morning, again, I encourage the Board of Commissioners to look at option one, and let's get this going, let's get this started, and let staff leave here today with some guidance on putting together the agreement with the Clackamas County Coalition, and we'll see how it works out over the next year. Thank you.
That is actually essentially, if you don't mind, Commissioner Savas, that is where I am at this point too. It's a pilot. Yeah, we're getting a little off task here. Surprise, surprise. But I think we should move ahead with something, give you the clarity to get started with this, at least to start with. And then these other issues that I mentioned as sidebars, I think we can work out as we move ahead. And I wanted this on public record so our arts partners realize that we need to be talking about this a little more, you know, as we move forward. So do we have a motion?
I move to direct staff to advance a lottery arts grants program funding agreement with the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition and provide lottery dollar funding support of $100,000.
I'll second that. Okay, Gary, can you call the poll?
Any more discussion? Are you ready for the
Any
vote?
more discussion? I know, Paul, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, so don't take my vote in opposition as I'm against this. Take my vote in opposition as I don't understand exactly what's going to happen here. So,
yeah.
so I'm not, you know, I won't get in the way of it. So, but
That's okay.
don't misinterpret my no vote today.
No, it's not a problem. And
Commissioner West has his hand raised to
yes,
speak.
Commissioner West.
I'm on the fence with this vote. I want to advance this and not procrastinate and get it done. But I think there's like some pretty significant unanswered questions about how we're going to fund arts moving forward. I don't know if another motion can be made to direct staff to answer those questions that we've done after we do this. Like, I'm trying to find out. I don't want to like vote against something I've been passionate about and the progress we've made, but I still think that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. So I don't know. I know we're going to call a vote in a minute. I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Well, I think that, for what it's worth, I think if we can move ahead now, this gives you some comfort. And just because we're moving ahead with starting a pilot program doesn't mean that we can't continue to work with staff and get clarification on those questions. I kind of see this as a work in progress a bit, so that doesn't worry me as much. And Dan is looking very pained right now.
It's my normal look.
You poor guy. We're doing it again, Dan, making you crazy. I love it.
Chair,
So-
I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion. So I move to amend the motion to direct staff to go forward and come back with a more accurate revised number that addresses the concerns raised here today.
Do you accept that?
I don't accept the modification to the motion.
We need a second to the amendment first. So is there a second to the amended motion?
I'll second the amended motion.
Oh, I
Now your
love you
discussion
guys.
is on the amended motion. That's your discussion next.
All right, I guess. Any discussion, or should we call?
Yeah,
Is it a friendly amendment, and it doesn't?
No, you're discussing the amendment right now, and you'll vote on the amendment.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, so just to clarify, my purpose here is to, I think, I sense Commissioner Scholl and Schrader want to move forward. This would get us to move forward, and in the near future, staff would come back with, is the $100,000 number the right number? So on and so forth, and maybe even answer some other questions. So this won't stop anything. It'll be the beginning. We're starting something, but it's just an amendment to come back and make sure we get the numbers right.
So yes, we're going to say yes. Let me see if I understand this, to move ahead with $100,000. You just want to revisit with further questions?
It's yes to move forward with the program, but maybe the number needs to be adjusted in a week or two. And I sense it'll be adjusted upwards, frankly.
Well, yes, Dan, what did you want to say as we make you crazy here? Okay.
As Gary articulated so eloquently to you previously, you sent us away with one simple task, and that one simple task was to look at, is there a local entity that reviews grants that may be able to assist the county?
Right.
That we may direct funds to, so they could look at art opportunities and cultural opportunities around Clackamas County. Now, today, you've talked about prioritizing RAC-funded projects. You've talked about wholly funding RAC-funded projects. You've talked, and so what I would ask, if we're going to delay this discussion, I need clarity on what those questions are. Because my perception right now from the discussion is the fact that you are looking for an exact number on how to fund certain entities to a certain level that were previously funded by RAC. And I need to know who those entities are. I mean, we can do that. I have no problem. But I just want to make sure I'm getting you the information that you want.
I know what they want, Dan. I already got it. Commissioner West has his hand raised to speak.
Yes, Commissioner West. I frankly just want to stay with the first directive, if I can just say something here. I think that's where we need to start. All of these other sidebars are something that I think as we move forward, we need to address, largely, Dan, because I don't want us to become the sole funding source from our economic development dollars. I think that it behooves other entities to step up to the plate and that we are partners in that. But that is a sidebar, as Commissioner Scholl said. Okay, so I think that what you stated, you're hearing all these things, but I think what we stated, I think we ought to just stay the course with what our original direct was, all right? Do we have that, folks?
I agree with you.
Okay, that's where we are. Commissioner West, did you want to say anything? Because I think we're going to have to call the vote pretty quickly here, right? Okay. Ben, are you there?
He's on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that the motion made by Commissioner Savas actually is a little bit of the best of both worlds, and allows us to kind of like take a more holistic and approach this right away officially. So not only will we continue with basically option one, but it's augmented to say, hey, we have these questions around how we're going to do this and how we're going to prioritize and fill the gap with these other issues. So I'm going to support the amendment because I think it finds that balance. So I am going to vote yes on Commissioner Savas's amendment.
All right, so that's what we're voting on now.
You're voting on the amendment.
All right, so Gary, let's call the poll.
Andrew, go ahead.
Commissioner Scholl,
Nay.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
For the purposes of moving us forward, one way or the other, I'm going to say aye. But the clarity for me is, and thank you, Commissioner Shull, I'm just trying to move us ahead here. But the clarity is, at least we're going to be starting this $100,000 piece for these folks in order to advise us and help us give money to the arts. And then these other questions we can address and continue to make your life extremely interesting, Dan. Okay,
You still have to vote now on the main motion, which is to authorize this grant program for $100,000
Okay.
with the amendment that you
do I
just
have a
heard.
motion?
You already have the motion. Is there any more discussion before you vote on the main motion? Commissioner West has his hand raised.
All right,
I just have a clarification on point of order. If we vote yes, does that, what does that do to the amendment? If we vote no, what does that do? Can you clarify?
The amendment is now added to the main motion. So
Right.
basically, you're approving a grant program for $100,000, but not until staff comes back to you first to address all the concerns you've raised today and bring all the information back to you. So it's all compiled together. So voting yes on the main motion is still affirming the amendment you just made.
And I will support that vote.
okay.
And aye.
Do you get it, Commissioner West? You understand?
I do, and I'll be supporting the original motion.
Okay, so Gary, any more discussion? Seeing none, Gary, can we
go ahead.
call the poll?
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye. It is approved.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Come back to you with all this information as soon as we can, but it'll probably be 2 months. But
That's
before the
fine.
end of the calendar year, we'll come back
It's
to
a
you.
pilot
with this.
project, and let's just get it going.
That is the only policy session today, Chair. So
Well, colleagues, any other comments we need to make, or can we, I guess we can adjourn, okay? All right, thank you for being here today, and let's go forth and continue to do good work.
And that is how the sausage is made.
There we go.